I still remember the exact smell of frost on Church Street that night. That sharp, maple syrup, tinged Vermont air that hits you like a slap when the temperature drops below zero. At 12:07 a.m., someone pounded on my front door so hard I thought the hinges would snap. I'm Virginia Whitcomb, 64 years old, owner of Whitcomb Family Roasters on Pine Street in Burlington, Vermont. That brick building with the rusty rooster sign has been standing since 1947. My grandfather built it with his own hands, one beam at a time, one dream at a time. Now I roast 2,000 pounds of single-origin beans every week with 15 loyal souls who still call me Boss Ginny. They show up every morning even when Green Mountain beans cost 40% more than last year. Even when the big chains are crushing us, like ants under their designer boots. I buried my husband Tom 10 years ago. Empire Brew Corporation sabotaged our biggest contract, tanked our finances, and the stress gave him the heart attack that finished him. I thought that was the worst day of my life. Turns out the worst was just warming up. So there I was, standing in my flannel pajamas at midnight, shotgun in one hand because this is Vermont and we don't mess around. The pounding on my door sounded like someone was trying to break through to next week. Then I heard the voice. Virginia Whitcomb, open this damn door before I freeze my ass off. My blood went cold, colder than the -10-degree air seeping through the cracks. Only one person on God's green earth ever swore at me like that, my baby sister, Clara, the one who vanished 30 years ago after screaming in my face at our brother Ethan's funeral. The one who blamed me for his death, said I killed him by being too stubborn to sell Dad's roastery when some corporation came sniffing around our family recipes. I swung that door open, ready to slam it shut again. Virginia Whitcomb doesn't forgive easy, and she sure as hell doesn't forget. Clara, you've got 10 seconds before I call the Burlington PD. She looked like hell. Cheeks hollow, eyes wild like a deer that's been running from wolves for miles. Snowflakes were melting in her red hair, the same copper penny color Mom used to braid on Sunday mornings. Don't open the roastery tomorrow, she rasped. Her voice was broken glass. Just trust me this once, Ginny. They're coming for everything. I laughed. That bitter Vermont dry laugh that comes from surviving 10 winters of loss. Trust you? You left me holding a $1.2 million debt and a graveyard of family secrets. But then I saw it. The way her hands shook. That same tremor Dad had the week before his so-called heart attack. Something cold and heavy crawled up my spine like ice water. Clara pushed past me into my living room, tracking snow across the hardwood Tom and I refinished in 2008. She was breathing hard, looking over her shoulder every 3 seconds like someone was about to burst through the door with guns blazing. I'm serious, Ginny. Close the factory tomorrow. Tell your people it's inventory day. Tell them anything. Just don't open those doors. I crossed my arms. After 30 years of radio silence, you show up at midnight ordering me around? Give me one good reason why I shouldn't throw you back out into the snow. She turned to face me, and that's when I saw the scar. A thick, angry line running from her left ear down to her collarbone, fresh enough to still be pink. Because they burned down the Anderson roastery in Montpelier last month, she whispered, made it look like faulty wiring. Insurance investigation found nothing. 3 generations of coffee roasting, gone in 4 hours. My stomach dropped. I'd heard about that fire on the local news. Felt sick for weeks, thinking about the Anderson family losing everything. Clara's eyes locked onto mine, and because Empire Brew Corporation is coming for you next, they want the Whitcomb blend recipes, and they don't take no for an answer. Empire Brew, the same corporate vultures who killed my Tom, who've been circling our little operation like sharks smelling blood in the water. I should have kicked her out right then, should have called her crazy and bolted my door, but there was something in her voice, something that sounded like the truth wrapped in barbed wire. How do you know this? She looked away, Let's just say I've spent the last 30 years learning things I wish I didn't know. About Ethan, about Dad, about what really happened to this family. My heart was pounding now. Ethan died on a hiking trail, fell and hit his head on granite. Dad had a massive coronary at his desk. Clara's laugh was hollow. You always were stubborn as a mule, Ginny. That's what I loved about you. That's what's going to get you killed. She grabbed my shoulders, and I could feel her nails digging in through my flannel. Tomorrow morning, if you open that roastery, everything you've worked for will be gone by sunrise. Your employees, your legacy. The only thing left of the Whitcomb name. I stared at my sister, this ghost from my past who smelled like cigarettes and desperation. Every instinct screamed at me to ignore her, to open my doors at 6 a.m. like I've done for 42 years. But that tremor in her hands, that scar on her neck, the way she kept glancing at the window like death itself was watching. Fine, I heard myself say. Inventory day it is. Clara's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank God. I'll explain everything tomorrow, I swear, but right now, I need to disappear before they realize I'm here. She was out the door in seconds, melting back into the Vermont darkness like she'd never existed. I stood there in my doorway at midnight, staring at the empty street, wondering why every warning in Burlington always smells like smoke before you see the fire. I called my foreman, Jake Morrison. 23 years he's worked for me. Told him we're closed for inventory. He didn't ask questions. Then I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and waited for dawn. That's when everything went straight to hell. I woke to sirens at 5:47 a.m. The kind that rattle the stained glass windows of the First Congregational Church 2 blocks over. The kind that make your stomach drop before your brain even catches up. My phone was vibrating itself off the nightstand. Texts from employees, missed calls from the fire chief, a push alert from WCAX News lighting up my screen like a punch to the gut. Massive blaze at Whitcomb Roasters, arson suspected. I threw on my boots without bothering to tie them. Grabbed Dad's old roasting ledger from the safe because some instinct told me I'd need proof of everything. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely turn the key in my truck. The streets were still lit by Christmas lights the city never bothers to take down until March, red and green reflecting off snow that looked pink in the pre-dawn glow. Beautiful. Peaceful. A complete lie. I could smell it 3 blocks away, that thick, choking smell of wood smoke mixed with something sweeter, coffee beans burning, 400 pounds of Ethiopian yirgacheffe going up like incense at a funeral nobody invited me to. The roastery was gone. Not damaged, not salvageable, gone. Just a skeleton of glowing beams and twisted metal where my grandfather's dream used to stand. Where I'd spent 42 years of my life roasting beans at exactly 423 degrees Fahrenheit. Where Tom proposed to me on a Tuesday afternoon that smelled like Colombian Supremo and hope. Fire trucks everywhere, hoses spraying water that turned to steam the second it hit the flames. My 15 employees standing in the street, some of them crying, all of them staring at me like I had answers. I didn't have anything except rage and bourbon still burning in my empty stomach. Chief Mallory found me standing there. She's a woman who's fought more Vermont winters than I have, which is saying something, tough as granite and twice as hard to crack. Ginny, she said quietly, we need to talk. She pulled me away from the crowd, away from my people who were watching their livelihoods turn to ash. Her face had that look cops get when they're about to ruin your whole life. Your pickup was caught on security cam pulling in at 3:12 a.m. Your personal roasting ledger was found open on the main roaster, and your insurance claim just hit the system for $800,000. I laughed. I actually laughed so hard I nearly puked right there on Church Street. Chief, I was home snoring loud enough to wake the dead. Called my foreman at 11 to close for inventory. Went to bed at midnight. She pulled out her phone, showed me the footage. My red 1000, 998 Ford pickup clear as day, license plates in perfect focus. A figure in my exact Carhartt jacket, the brown one with the coffee stain on the left sleeve, walking through the front door with a can of something. Then that same figure, my ghost, tossing accelerant across the roasting floor like they were seasoning a skillet. My knees buckled. Chief Mallory caught my elbow before I hit the pavement. Someone wore my life like a skin suit and lit it on fire. That's when Jake Morrison stepped forward. My foreman. 23 years of loyalty. 23 years of showing up early and staying late. The man who cried at Tom's funeral and held my hand through every bank meeting when we were drowning in debt. "Boss Ginny," he said. And his voice cracked. "I'm so sorry." The way he said it. The way he wouldn't meet my eyes. Everything clicked into place like a bullet sliding into a chamber. "Jake," I whispered. "What did you do?" He looked at the ground. "They offered me $50,000. Said nobody would get hurt. Said you'd get the insurance money and could rebuild somewhere else." I felt something break inside my chest. Not my heart. I'd already buried that with Tom. Something harder. Something I didn't know I still had left to lose. "Who's they, Jake?" He finally looked up. "Empire Brew Corporation. They've been planning this for months." The crowd around us had gone silent. Fire still crackling behind us. Snow starting to fall like the world was trying to cover up the crime scene. Chief Mallory's radio crackled. I caught fragments. Fraud investigation. Arrest warrant. Financial motive. They were going to arrest me for burning down my own legacy, for destroying the only thing I had left of my family. That's when the pain hit, real and familiar, like the morning Tom died clutching that forged termination letter from Empire Brew, like the day Clara vanished and left me alone with the wreckage of our family. Like every time the bank threatened foreclosure because bean prices jumped another 12% and the corporate chains undercut us until we were bleeding money just to keep the lights on. But this time, something different happened. Something snapped awake inside me. That same fire I used to roast beans. That same stubborn Vermont granite my grandfather built this place on. I looked at Jake. At Chief Mallory. At my employees, who were waiting to see if I'd crumble. Then I looked at the ruins of Whitcomb Family Roasters, 78 years of history reduced to smoke and insurance fraud charges. I decided right there, snow soaking through my flannel, my boots unlaced, my world burning. They wanted war? Fine. Vermont women don't just endure winter, we weaponize it. "Chief," I said, my voice steady as bedrock, "I didn't burn down my roastery, but I know who did, and I know why. And if you give me 72 hours before you slap those cuffs on me, I'll hand you something bigger than insurance fraud." She studied my face. 40 years of knowing me. Of watching me survive things that would have broken weaker people. 72 hours, Ginny. Then I'm coming for you with a warrant. Don't make me regret this. I turned to walk away, and that's when I saw her, Clara, standing across the street in the shadows watching everything. Our eyes met through the falling snow. She nodded once, then disappeared. And I knew exactly where to find her. Clara was waiting in my kitchen when I got home. Like she'd never left, like 30 years hadn't passed, like she owned the place. She was brewing my dark roast on my stove, strong enough to wake the dead. The smell hit me before I even opened the door. That rich, bitter smell that's supposed to mean comfort and home. Right now it just made me want to scream. "Sit," she said without turning around. I didn't. I stood in my own doorway, snow melting off my boots onto the hardwood Tom and I refinished together. My roastery was ash. My foreman was a traitor. The police thought I was an arsonist. "Start talking," I said, "or I throw you out in your socks." Clara turned around. In the morning light, she looked older than me. Lines carved deep around her mouth. gray threading through that red hair. But her eyes were the same, sharp and green like Dad's. She slid an envelope across the kitchen table, old, yellowed at the edges, my father's handwriting on the front, unmistakable even after 20 years. My hands shook harder than the night I signed Tom's funeral papers. Inside was a letter, dated the week Dad died. The week, they told me, his heart just gave out at his desk while he was calculating next quarter's bean orders. I could barely read through the tears, but the words burned themselves into my brain. If you're reading this, Empire Brew finally came for me. Ethan didn't fall hiking Camel's Hump. They pushed him off that trail because he wouldn't sell them our blend recipes. I'm next. They've already poisoned me. Clara's inside their boardroom now, doing what needs to be done. Trust her, Ginny. She's the brave one. You're the survivor. Together, you're unstoppable. I felt the room tilt sideways. 30 years. 30 years of hating my sister for abandoning me, for blaming me, for vanishing when I needed her most. And she'd been undercover the entire time. Sleeping with the enemy. Stealing documents, keeping me alive. I looked up at Clara. She was crying now too, silent tears running down her hollow cheeks. Ethan was murdered, she said quietly. They made it look like an accident. Hikers found him at the bottom of the cliff with his skull cracked open, but his backpack was 30 feet away. His water bottle was still full, and there were bruises on his shoulders where someone grabbed him. I couldn't breathe. My baby brother, 28 years old, brilliant roaster who could taste the difference between Kenyan AA and Colombian Supremo blindfolded. Gone because he said no to some corporate suits and $1,000 shoes. Dad knew, Clara continued. He started investigating. That's when they poisoned him. Slow, undetectable. Made his heart give out so nobody would ask questions. My father, the strongest man I ever knew, who built Whitcomb Roasters with his bare hands and his grandfather's recipes. Murdered for coffee beans. Clara sat down across from me. I noticed the scar on her neck again, the fresh one that looked angry and painful. I've been working for Empire Brew for 27 years, she said. Started as a secretary, worked my way up to senior vice president of acquisitions. I've been in their boardrooms, their private meetings. I know where all the bodies are buried. Literally, I asked. She nodded. Literally. That's when she told me about Jake. About the $50,000 they wired to his account 3 weeks ago. About how they'd been grooming him for months, promising him a management position at their new Vermont facility. About how he'd handed them my truck keys and my jacket and my entire life on a silver platter. Then she told me about the trust fund. Dad set it up the week before he died. $2 million hidden in accounts under the Unitarian Church's name. He knew he wasn't going to make it. Wanted to make sure we'd have something to fight back with. $2 million. While I'd been scraping by, begging banks for loans, selling off equipment just to make payroll. My father had left us an arsenal, and I never knew it existed. But the biggest shock was still coming. Clara pulled out her phone, showed me a picture of a young woman with red hair and my grandfather's eyes. 28, beautiful, fierce-looking. This is Lily, Clara said softly. My daughter. Your niece. I stared at the photo. At this stranger who was somehow family. She's an investigative reporter for 7 days. Been digging into Empire Brew for 2 years. She doesn't know we're related yet. I kept her away to protect her, but she's close, Ginny. Really close to exposing everything. I started laughing. Couldn't help it. The kind of laughter that sounds like breaking glass. You let me think you hated me for 3 decades? You let me bury you in my heart? You let me face every loss alone? Clara's eyes filled with tears that finally spilled over. I had to, Ginny. You're the stubborn one. If you knew the truth, you would have marched into their headquarters with a shotgun and gotten yourself killed. Damn right I would have. But hearing her say it. Hearing her call me the stubborn one, the strong one, the survivor. Something cracked open in my chest, wider than the fire had cracked my roastery. She stood up and wrapped her arms around me. I tried to push her away at first. 30 years of hurt doesn't evaporate because of one letter and one truth bomb. But then I was holding on to her like she was the only solid thing left in the world. "I'm sorry," she whispered into my hair. "I'm so sorry I made you carry this alone." We stood there in my kitchen, two broken sisters who'd spent 3 decades on opposite sides of a war we didn't start. But we were going to finish it. Together. We had maybe 10 minutes before Empire Brew realized Clara was gone, and I wasn't sitting around waiting for my arrest warrant. 10 minutes to grab what we needed and disappear. I threw Dad's letter, my shotgun, and a duffel bag of cash from the emergency safe into my backup truck. The old 2003 Ford I keep for Church Street Festival weekends when downtown turns into pedestrian maple crepe madness. Clara was already in the driver's seat, engine running, hands gripping the wheel like she was about to pilot a fighter jet. "You drive like a maniac?" I asked. She grinned. 27 years of corporate parking garages. I've forgotten more about evasive driving than you've ever known. We tore out of my driveway just as the first black SUV rounded the corner onto Church Street. They weren't even trying to be subtle anymore. 2 vehicles, tinted windows, Virginia plates that probably traced back to some shell company in the Cayman Islands. Clara hit the gas so hard my head snapped back against the headrest. We blew through downtown Burlington, doing 50 in a 35 zone. Past the library where Mom used to take us for story time, past the coffee shop that buys my beans. Used to buy my beans. Past everything I'd ever known, with 2 SUVs gaining on us like wolves chasing deer through snow. I rolled down my window and pulled Dad's old 12 gauge across my lap. "Check the shells. Both barrels loaded. He taught me to shoot when I was 12 years old, on our property up in Stowe. Told me a Vermont woman should know how to defend what's hers. Never thought I'd be defending it at 64 against corporate hitmen on Shelburne Road." "Clara," I said, "how fast can this thing go?" She didn't answer, just pressed the accelerator harder. We hit Shelburne Farms doing 70. The SUVs were right behind us now. Close enough I could see the driver's face in the side mirror. Young, maybe 30. Cold eyes like a shark. He probably had a wife and kids somewhere, a mortgage, a dog named Max. Right now, I didn't care. Snow was coming down harder, big fat flakes that stuck to the windshield faster than the wipers could clear them. The road was turning into an ice rink. We flew past the Ethan Allen homestead. Past the skating rink where I taught Clara to skate when we were kids. She was 7, kept falling on her butt and laughing until she couldn't breathe. Funny how memory works. How it shows up in the middle of a car chase when you're running for your life. "Hold on," Clara yelled. We hit a patch of black ice doing 65. The truck spun. Full 360. The world became a blur of white and gray, and the sick feeling of zero control. My stomach dropped into my boots. I saw the guardrail, the trees, the frozen lake beyond, everything my life could end against in the next 3 seconds. "If we die," I screamed, "I'm haunting you for eternity." Clara laughed. Actually laughed. First real laugh I'd heard from her in 30 years. Then she cranked the wheel hard, caught the spin, and gunned it. We straightened out, still on the road, still alive, still moving. The SUVs weren't as lucky. The first one tried to follow our spin. Driver overcorrected, clipped the guardrail doing 70, metal screaming against metal, sparks flying like fireworks. Then it flipped. Once, twice, 3 times. Rolling across the northbound lane like a toy someone kicked. It came to rest upside down, and then it exploded. Not like the movies. Not a huge fireball, just a sudden whoosh of flame and black smoke pouring out of the engine. I watched it burn in the side mirror, watched it turn into the same kind of skeleton my roastery had become just hours ago. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. These weren't men, they were invoices in suits, line items on a corporate balance sheet, acceptable losses in a hostile takeover. And I was done being their target. The second SUV kept coming, driver smarter, more careful, hanging back just enough to stay in control but close enough to track us. Clara took a hard right onto a side road, narrow, tree-lined, the kind of back road only locals know about. "Where are we going?" I asked. "The cabin," she said. "Dad's hunting cabin up in Underhill. It's still in the family trust. They don't know about it." I remembered that cabin, hadn't been there in 25 years. Not since Tom and I spent a weekend there before he proposed. Before Empire, Brew entered our lives like poison in a well. The second SUV was still behind us. Closer now. I could see there were two people inside. Driver and passenger. The passenger had something in his lap. "Clara," I said quietly, "the guy on the right has a rifle." "I know, hold on." She took another turn. This one so sharp I thought we'd roll. My shoulder slammed into the door, the shotgun slid across the seat. But we made it. And the SUV, trying to match our speed, didn't. It went straight into a snowbank, 3 feet deep, buried up to the windshield. We kept driving. 10 minutes later, we were deep in the woods, no headlights behind us, no sound except our engine and our breathing. Clara pulled into a clearing I barely recognized. The cabin stood there like a ghost, logs dark with age, chimney crumbling, windows boarded up. But it was still standing. We got out of the truck. My legs were shaking, adrenaline wearing off and leaving behind the cold reality of what just happened. "I just watched Mindy," I said. Clara put her hand on my shoulder. "Men who murdered Ethan. Who poisoned Dad. Who burned your life down and tried to frame you for it. I know. But still." We stood there in the snow. 2 sisters, 2 survivors. 2 women who'd lost everything and were now standing in the wreckage trying to figure out how to fight back. "Come on," Clara said, "we've got work to do." Inside the cabin, covered in dust and 25 years of neglect, were boxes, dozens of them. Dad's files. Clara had been storing evidence here for years. "This is it," she said. "This is how we burn them back." We couldn't stay at the cabin long. Too exposed. Too obvious once Empire Brew realized their hitmen weren't reporting back. Clara was already 10 steps ahead. She always was the strategic one, the planner. "We need to get to the church," she said, throwing boxes back into the truck. "The Unitarian church downtown. Dad left something there, something bigger than evidence." I didn't ask questions. Just helped her load up and climbed back into the passenger seat. My whole body ached. My brain felt like it had been through a wood chipper. But we kept moving, because stopping meant dying, or worse, losing everything Dad and Ethan died to protect. We ditched the truck 3 blocks away behind a boutique coffee shop. The irony wasn't lost on me. We walked the rest of the way through back alleys, staying out of sight. The Unitarian Church stood on Church Street like it had for 150 years. White steeple, rainbow flag flying higher than the cross some Sundays. The kind of place that never locked its doors because Burlington still believed in trust. Dad loved this church, not for the religion, for the community, for the people who showed up when your barn burned down or your wife got sick or you needed a place to hide $2 million from corporate murderers. Clara led me around to the back entrance, down the stone steps to the basement where they hold AA meetings and quilting circles and Wednesday night suppers. "This way," she whispered. The basement smelled like old hymnals and coffee from whatever meeting happened last night, folding chairs stacked against the walls, piano in the corner missing half its keys. Clara walked straight to a storage closet I'd walked past 1,000 times, moved aside boxes of Christmas decorations and Easter banners, pulled up a piece of floorboard that looked exactly like all the others. Underneath was a safe. Fireproof. Heavy duty. The kind that could survive a nuclear blast and still keep your secrets locked tight. She entered the combination. Dad's birthday, Mom's birthday, Ethan's birthday, the 3 people Empire Brew had taken from us. The safe opened with a click that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet basement. Inside were stacks of bearer bonds, the old-fashioned kind, the kind you can cash anywhere, no questions asked, $2 million worth. Next to them were USB drives, dozens of them, each one labeled in Dad's handwriting: Empire crimes, financial records, assassination orders, bribery evidence, falsified inspections. 27 years of Clara's undercover work, 27 years of evidence that could bring down an empire. But that wasn't the thing that broke me. At the bottom of the safe was a photograph, printed on glossy paper, crisp, clear, recent. My brother Ethan, standing in front of a coffee plantation, tan, smiling, very much alive. The date stamp in the corner read 2 weeks after his funeral, 2 weeks after I buried an empty casket and screamed at Clara for blaming me for his death. I sank to my knees on that cold stone floor. My legs just gave out. Everything I'd believed for 30 years shattered like dropped porcelain. Ethan was alive. My baby brother. The one I'd mourned. The one whose death had poisoned my marriage and turned me into this bitter, closed-off version of myself. Alive. 30 years of grief poured out of me like over-extracted espresso. Bitter. Scalding. Unstoppable. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Could only feel this massive wave of everything I'd been holding back. The tears came hard, Vermont hard, the kind that freeze on your face before they hit the ground. Clara knelt beside me, put her arms around me like she used to when we were kids and I'd skinned my knee or lost a spelling bee. "He faked his death to protect you, Ginny," she whispered. Empire Brew had marked him for execution. If they thought he was dead, they'd leave you alone. Let you keep the roastery without pressure. I looked at her through tears that wouldn't stop. And you faked hating me. Made me think I'd lost my entire family. Same reason, she said, her own voice breaking. If I stayed close, they'd use me against you, use you against Ethan. We had to scatter. Had to make them think the Whitcomb family was broken and beaten. "Where is he?" I managed to ask. "Where's Ethan now?" "Costa Rica, running a small plantation under an assumed name, training local roasters, living quietly. He wanted to tell you so many times, but Dad made him promise. Made us both promise to keep you safe by keeping you in the dark." I sat there on that basement floor, surrounded by evidence of corporate murder and family secrets and more money than I'd seen in my entire life. And I felt something shift inside me. The grief was still there, the anger, the betrayal, but underneath it all was something else, something hotter, something that had been building for 30 years. Pure, focused, righteous fury. I stood up. My knees creaked. My back protested, but I stood up taller than I had in decades. Wiped the tears off my face with the back of my hand. Looked at my sister, my partner, my family. "Let's go make some corporate bastards cry," I said. Clara smiled. That sharp, dangerous smile I remembered from when we were teenagers and someone at school messed with one of us. "That's my sister," she said. "That's the Ginny I've been waiting for." We loaded the bearer bonds into a backpack, grabbed 3 of the USB drives with the most damaging evidence, left the rest in the safe in case we didn't make it. Because this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice, about reclaiming what they'd stolen from my family. About making sure no other small business owner had to watch their life's work burn while corporate lawyers prepared fraud charges. This was about legacy, and I'll be damned if I let Empire Brew write the final chapter of the Whitcomb story. We walked out of that church basement with $2 million and enough evidence to destroy a corporation. And for the first time in 30 years, I felt like I could finally breathe. Lily was waiting for us at the cabin off Route 7 when we arrived just after midnight. I saw her before she saw us, standing in the doorway with a laptop bag slung over her shoulder, fire engine red hair catching the moonlight. 28 years old and looking exactly like Clara did at that age. Except Lily had my father's eyes, sharp, green, missing nothing. She spotted us and ran through the snow in sneakers that were completely wrong for Vermont winter. City girl. Probably spent too much time in Burlington coffee shops writing articles. My coffee shops. Or what used to be my coffee shops before Empire Brew burned my world down. "Grandma Ginny," she shouted, and threw her arms around me so hard my ribs creaked. Grandma. I'd never been a grandmother. Never even had kids. Tom and I tried for years, before we accepted it wasn't going to happen. But standing there with this young woman hugging me like I'd always been part of her life, I felt something crack open in my chest, something warm, something I thought died with Tom. I hugged her back. Harder than I meant to. Like if I let go, she'd disappear like everyone else I'd ever loved. When we finally pulled apart, she was crying. I was crying. Clara was standing off to the side pretending she had something in her eye. "I've been writing about Empire Brew for 3 years," Lily said, wiping her face with her sleeve, "investigating their land grabs, their hostile takeovers, their pattern of suspicious fires in small businesses that wouldn't sell." She looked at Clara. "Mom told me last week who I really was, who you are, what happened to our family." Then she looked back at me. "You just handed me the Pulitzer, Grandma." I laughed, the kind of laugh that's half sob. "Kid, let's survive the week first. Then we can worry about awards." We went inside the cabin. Clara got the generator running while Lily set up her laptop on the old kitchen table. I made coffee with the supplies we'd grabbed. Real coffee. From the emergency stash I keep at home for when the apocalypse finally arrives. Turns out, the apocalypse looks a lot like your granddaughter syncing USB drives at 1 a.m, while corporate hitmen hunt you through Vermont backroads. The files were worse than I imagined. Better than I hoped. $12 million in shell companies traced directly to Empire Brew executives. Vermont land purchases going back 15 years. Small roasteries, family farms, historic properties. All of them bought for pennies after mysterious fires or health code violations or sudden financial collapses. 23 families destroyed. 23 legacies erased. All so Empire Brew could expand their footprint in artisan coffee territory. We were just the latest targets, but we were the first ones who'd survived long enough to fight back. Lily's fingers flew across the keyboard like a concert pianist. Mapping connections. Cross-referencing bank records. Building a case so airtight, even the best corporate lawyers couldn't squeeze through. "This is good," she kept saying. "This is really good. This is federal crime good." Around 3 a.m., I poured her a cup of my dark roast. The 1982 blend. The one Dad created the year Clara was born. Strong enough to wake the dead and keep them walking. Lily took one sip and started coughing like a freshman at UVM trying whiskey for the first time. "Jesus, Grandma," she gasped, eyes watering. "This is legal arson." I smirked. "Kid, you haven't tasted revenge yet, but you will." Clara laughed. Actually laughed. The sound filled the cabin like music. Like something I hadn't heard since before Ethan died. Before Dad died. Before our family scattered like ashes in the wind. For the first time since 1994, my sister smiled. Really smiled. Not the tight, painful expression she'd worn when she showed up at my door, but the real thing, the smile I remembered from childhood. And watching Lily work, watching her build the case that would bring down the corporation that murdered our family, watching 3 generations of Whitcomb women sit around a table planning war instead of surrendering. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, maybe decades. Hope. The kind that tastes like fresh ground coffee beans at 5 a.m. on roasting day, when the darkness is starting to lift and you can smell possibility in the air. We worked through the night, Lily organizing files, Clara providing insider knowledge about board members and company structure, me making coffee and sandwiches and keeping watch at the window. By dawn, we had everything: financial records proving fraud, email chains discussing arson for hire, recorded phone calls where executives laughed about small business owners losing everything. And a plan. A beautiful, dangerous, absolutely crazy plan. "We're going to crash their board meeting," Lily said, looking up from her laptop. "Empire Brew's quarterly shareholders meeting is in 3 days. Boston. All the executives will be there." Clara nodded. "I can get us in. I'm still technically senior vice president until they realize I've gone rogue." "And then what?" I asked. "We just walk in and hand them a USB drive?" Lily grinned. That shark smile that told me she was definitely a Whitcomb. "No, Grandma. We broadcast everything. Live. To every major news outlet. Every social media platform. Every journalist who's ever written about corporate corruption. We burn them down the way they burned you down, except our fire spreads, and theirs ends." I looked at my sister, at my granddaughter, at these 2 women who'd spent years fighting a war I didn't even know was happening. At 64 years old, standing in a cabin in the Vermont woods, planning to destroy a billion-dollar corporation with nothing but evidence and audacity. I felt more alive than I had since Tom died, since Dad died, since the morning I found my roastery reduced to ash and lies. "All right," I said. "Let's go make history." Clara raised her coffee cup. "To the Whitcomb women." Lily raised hers. "To revenge." I raised mine. "To family." We clinked our mugs together. The sound echoed through the cabin like a promise. Like a declaration of war. 3 days until Empire Brew's board meeting. 3 days to prepare. 3 days until we either won everything or lost it all. But for the first time in 30 years, I wasn't fighting alone. And that made all the difference. 3 days went by in a blur of planning and preparation, coffee and strategy, evidence and audacity. Empire Brew's annual shareholders meeting was being held at the Burlington Waterfront Event Center, the fancy one with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Champlain. The one they rent out for weddings and corporate galas and $500 a plate charity brunches. Today's theme was Vermont heritage and sustainability. The irony made me want to scream. They had ice sculptures outside, a 10-foot coffee cup carved from frozen Lake Champlain water. Probably cost more than I paid my employees in a month. Inside, 300 people in designer suits and diamond earrings. Executives, shareholders, lawyers. The kind of people who decide which small businesses live and which ones burn. We arrived at noon, right when the CEO was scheduled to give his keynote about Empire Brew's commitment to local communities. I walked in wearing Tom's old flannel, the red one with the patch on the elbow, my snow boots that had seen 40 Vermont winters, no makeup, no pretense, just 30 years of rage and a USB drive in my pocket. Clara was beside me in her vice president suit. Still had her security badge. Still looked like she belonged. Lily was behind us with her phone out and her press credentials around her neck. Security started moving toward us, 2 guys built like linebackers, earpieces and everything. That's when Lily went live. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, every social media platform she could hit at once. Streaming live from Empire Brew shareholders meeting, she said into her phone, about to expose the truth about corporate murder and arson. Watch this. 40,000 viewers in 30 seconds, then 60,000, then 100,000. The security guards froze. You can't tackle a 64-year-old woman on a live stream watched by half the internet, not without making things infinitely worse. Clara flashed her badge at the door guards. Senior Vice President Clara Whitcomb with guests, CEOs expecting us. They let us through, probably radioing ahead, probably panicking, didn't matter. We were already inside. The ballroom was massive, 300 people seated at round tables covered in white linen, centerpieces made of coffee beans and Vermont maple leaves. A stage at the front with a podium and a massive projection screen. The CEO was mid-sentence. Talking about sustainability. About supporting local roasters. About being good neighbors. His name was Marcus Webb, 62, Harvard MBA, corner office in Boston, never roasted a bean in his life. I walked straight down the center aisle, my boots squeaking on the polished floor, every eye in the room turning to watch. Lily's phone camera capturing everything. Marcus Webb stopped talking, stared at me like I was a ghost, which I guess I was, the ghost of every small business owner he'd destroyed. I walked right up onto that stage, pulled the USB drive from my pocket, plugged it into the presentation laptop before anyone could stop me. The screen behind me lit up. Emails, financial records, bank transfers to shell companies, instructions for arson for hire, photos of properties before and after suspicious fires. And then, the photo of Ethan, my brother, bruises on his shoulders, dated 2 days before he supposedly fell off a hiking trail. Followed by Dad's toxicology report. The real one. The one they buried. Showing arsenic levels high enough to kill an elephant. Administered slowly, over 6 months. Not a heart attack. Murder. The room went dead silent, 300 people frozen in their seats. The only sound was the Lake Champlain wind rattling the windows. Marcus Webb tried to laugh it off. This is absurd. This woman is facing arson charges herself. She's clearly unstable and desperate. I leaned into the microphone, my voice steady as bedrock. My name is Virginia Whitcomb. I'm 64 years old. I've been roasting coffee in Burlington, Vermont since I was 22. I paused. Let that sink in. You burned my roastery 5 days ago, framed me for insurance fraud, bribed my foreman, tried to destroy everything my family built over 3 generations. The screen behind me cycled through more evidence, Jake Morrison's bank account showing the $50,000 bribe, security footage of Empire Brew employees staging the arson with my stolen truck. But before that, I continued, you murdered my brother Ethan when he refused to sell you our family recipes. You poisoned my father when he started investigating. My voice cracked, just for a second. But I pushed through. You killed my husband Tom by sabotaging our contracts and bankrupting us until the stress stopped his heart. You've destroyed 23 family businesses across Vermont, 23 legacies, 23 dreams. I looked straight at Marcus Webb, straight into his pale, sweating face. But you forgot one thing. Vermont women don't break. We brew back. That's when the federal agents walked in, 6 of them, FBI. They'd been waiting outside for Lily's signal. Chief Mallory was with them. She caught my eye and nodded. I'd kept my promise, 72 hours, and I'd delivered something bigger than insurance fraud. I'd delivered justice. Marcus Webb was already backing away from the podium, looking for exits, looking for lawyers, looking for any way out. There wasn't one. The shareholders were on their phones, some calling lawyers, some calling their brokers. The smart ones were selling their Empire Brew stock before it crashed completely. By the time they served dessert, the stock had dropped 42%, By the evening news cycle, it would be worthless. Lily was still streaming, still broadcasting every second to 300,000 viewers and counting. I walked off that stage. Clara met me at the bottom of the steps and grabbed my hand. "We did it," she whispered. "No," I said. "We survived it. Now we rebuild." The feds led Marcus Webb out in handcuffs. Other executives were scrambling, some trying to run, some trying to cooperate. It was beautiful, like watching a wildfire burn through dead wood, clearing space for new growth. Outside, snow was starting to fall, big fluffy flakes that caught the light from the ice sculptures. Vermont snow, the kind that covers everything ugly and makes the world clean again. I stood there with my sister and my granddaughter, 3 Whitcomb women who'd fought a war and won. And for the first time in 30 years, I felt something I thought I'd lost forever. Peace. 6 months later, I stood in front of a building that shouldn't exist. The new Whitcomb Roasters, twice as big as the old one, rising from the same Pine Street lot where my grandfather built his dream in 1947, where Empire Brew thought they'd buried us forever. The insurance finally came through once the feds cleared my name. The $2 million from Dad's trust fund paid for the rest. Solar panels on the roof, energy-efficient roasters, floor-to-ceiling windows so everyone could watch us work. Women-owned certification. Fair trade contracts locked in for a decade. Everything Dad and Tom and I ever dreamed about. Finally real. Clara stood beside me on opening day. She'd quit Empire Brew the day after the arrests, walked out of that corner office and never looked back. Now she was my business partner, my sister, my family. Lily was on my other side with her camera. Her article about Empire Brew's corruption won 3 journalism awards. Got picked up by the New York Times. Made her a household name in investigative reporting. But she still showed up every morning to help us prep for opening day. Still drank my coffee even though it made her wince. Still called me Grandma Ginny like she'd been doing it her whole life. My 15 employees were there. The loyal ones who stuck by me even when the police thought I was an arsonist. Even when it looked like everything was lost. They were cheering like it was the 4th of July, holding up signs they'd made. "Welcome back, Boss Ginny. Vermont strong. Coffee conquers all." I'd given them all raises, profit sharing, health insurance that actually covered things, the benefits I'd always wanted to provide but couldn't afford when we were barely surviving. Now we were doing more than surviving. We were thriving. The new Probat roaster stood in the center of the floor like a monument, German-engineered, state-of-the-art, capable of roasting 200 pounds at a time with perfect temperature control. Dad would have cried if he could see it. I walked up to that beautiful machine, ran my hand over the polished steel, felt the heat already building as we fired it up for the first time. "This is for you, Dad," I whispered. "For Ethan. For Tom. For everyone who didn't get to see this day." Clara squeezed my shoulder. "They're here, Ginny. I can feel them." Maybe she was right. Maybe the dead do watch over us. Maybe they were all standing in that new roastery, proud of what we'd built from the ashes. The first batch was ready. 50 pounds of single-origin Ethiopian beans. The same Yirgacheffe that burned in the fire. The same beans my grandfather first imported in 1952. We'd named the blend Revenge Roast, extra dark, bold enough to wake a conscience, strong enough to remind people that small businesses don't go down without a fight. I pulled the lever, watched those beans tumble into the cooling tray. The smell hit me like a memory, like every morning I'd ever spent in a roastery, like coming home after a 30-year exile. It smelled like victory. The employees erupted in applause. Someone popped champagne. Someone else started playing music from a speaker. The whole building filled with celebration and coffee and the sound of family laughing. Lily held up her camera. "Grandma, say something for the people watching." I looked at that lens, thought about all the people out there fighting their own battles, running their own small businesses, facing their own corporate giants. If you're watching this, I said, and you're a 64-year-old widow who just took down $1 billion empire with nothing but family, coffee, and Vermont stubbornness, first of all, subscribe. Everyone laughed. I smiled. But seriously, if you're out there fighting to save what you built, if some corporation is trying to crush you, if you think you're too old or too tired or too broken to fight back, let me tell you something. I paused, looked at Clara, at Lily, at my employees, who'd become family. You're not alone. And you're stronger than you think. This story isn't the end of anything. It's the first roast of the rest of our lives. The bell above the door jingled. Our first customer. Then another. Then another. Within an hour, there was a line around the block. Burlington locals who'd supported us for decades. New customers who'd heard our story. People who wanted to buy coffee from the women who'd taken down Empire Brew. The register kept ringing. The roaster kept spinning. The smell of fresh coffee kept filling the air. I poured Clara the first cup from the first batch. Revenge roast in a white ceramic mug with our new logo. A phoenix rising from coffee beans. She took a sip, closed her eyes, smiled that smile I hadn't seen since we were kids. Perfect, she said. Dad would be proud. I poured myself a cup, stood next to my sister in our new roastery. Watched Lily interview customers for her follow-up article. Watched our employees work the counter like a well-oiled machine. For the first time in 30 years, the Whitcomb women weren't just surviving, we were thriving. Empire Brew declared bankruptcy 4 months ago. Their executives were serving prison sentences. Their victims were getting restitution. 23 families were rebuilding what had been stolen from them. And we'd done that, 3 women with evidence and courage and the stubbornness that comes from being born in Vermont winters. I raised my cup to Clara. She raised hers back. Blood for blood, I said. She grinned. Hell, we brew stronger. We clinked our mugs together. The sound echoed through the roastery like a promise kept. Like a war won. Like the first note of a song we'd be singing for the rest of our lives. The Whitcomb family was back, bigger, stronger, united. And we were just getting started. 1 year later, I'm standing in front of 30 people at the community college, teaching them how to roast coffee. The same brick building where I learned to drive stick shift in the parking lot when I was 17. The same building where Dad taught welding classes on Thursday nights. Full circle doesn't even begin to cover it. My students are a mix. College kids looking for a trade, middle-aged folks switching careers, a few retirees who just want to learn something new. They look at me like I'm some kind of legend. I'm just a 65-year-old woman who refused to go down without a fight. Today we're roasting a Colombian blend. I show them how to listen for the first crack, how to watch the color change from green to yellow to brown, how to trust your nose more than any thermometer. This is what my grandfather taught my father. What my father taught me. What I'm passing on to anyone willing to learn. Legacy isn't just about blood, it's about knowledge. About keeping traditions alive even when corporations try to bury them. After class, I check my phone. Text from Lily. Her exposé on corporate corruption in the coffee industry just won the Pulitzer Prize for investigative journalism. I'm not surprised. That girl has fire in her veins. Whitcomb fire. The kind that doesn't burn out. She's in New York now, working for the Times, writing stories that make powerful people nervous, but she comes home every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every time I need her. That's what family does. Clara's in Honduras running our new fair trade co-op. We used part of the settlement money to buy land and help local farmers get better prices for their beans. She sends me photos every week. Her standing in coffee fields. Her teaching sustainable farming practices. Her smiling in the sunshine. She looks younger now than she did that midnight when she showed up at my door, like 30 years of weight lifted off her shoulders. We video chat every Sunday. Sometimes we talk about business. Sometimes we just talk, making up for 3 decades of silence. Sisters. Finally. The settlement from Empire Brew came through 8 months ago. $12 million split between the 23 families they destroyed. My share was enough to rebuild bigger and invest in futures I never thought possible. But the money isn't what makes me rich. Every morning I walk Church Street at dawn, past the farmer's market that's starting to set up, past the coffee shops that now proudly serve Whitcomb beans, past the mural someone painted on our building wall. It's Ethan, my brother, 28 years old forever, standing in a coffee field with the sunrise behind him. The artist captured him perfectly. That smile that could light up a room. Those hands that could coax magic from coffee beans. Underneath it says, "For those who refuse to sell their souls, for those who brew rebellion." I stop there every morning. Touch the wall. Tell him what's happening. Tell him we won. I think he knows. I think they all know. Dad, Tom, every small business owner who got crushed by corporate greed before they could fight back. We fought for them too. Marcus Webb, former CEO of Empire Brew, is serving 15 years in federal prison. I heard through Clara that he works in the prison kitchen, making coffee for other inmates. Decaf, no sugar, forever. The irony is almost too perfect. 19 other executives went down with him, some serving time, some settling civil suits. All of them learning that you can't murder your way to market dominance. Not anymore. Not when 3 stubborn Vermont women decide to burn your empire down. Jake Morrison, my former foreman, cut a deal. Testified against Empire Brew in exchange for probation. He sends me letters sometimes. Apologizing. Begging for forgiveness. I haven't opened them. Maybe someday. Maybe never. Some betrayals cut too deep for sorry to fix. But I'm not carrying that anger anymore. It's too heavy. Life's too short. I'm 65 years old now. My knees hurt on cold mornings. My hands shake sometimes from 43 years of working roasters. Gray hair. Laugh lines. Scars from a life lived fighting. And I've never felt more alive. The new Whitcomb Roasters employs 30 people now. We're expanding into wholesale. We're teaching other small businesses how to fight back against corporate pressure. We're building something that will outlast all of us. Lily's planning to come home next year, open a news bureau in Burlington, cover stories about real people, small towns, the fights that don't make national headlines until someone makes them impossible to ignore. She'll work from the apartment above the roastery. The one Tom and I lived in when we first got married. The one I kept empty for 10 years because it hurt too much to go inside. Now it's going to be full of life again, full of purpose. Clara's talking about retiring from Honduras in a few years. Coming home, working the counter, spending time with her daughter, with me, with the family we rebuilt from ruins. We're not broken anymore. We're not surviving. We're thriving. So if you're watching this at 3 in the morning, wondering if it's too late to fight back, let me tell you something. Hit that subscribe button, pour yourself a strong cup of coffee. The strongest you can stand. Because it's never too late. Whether you're 25 or 65. Whether you're fighting a corporation or fighting your own demons. Whether you think you're too old, too tired, too broken. You're not. The best roasts, like the best women, only get better with time. We get stronger, bolder, more complex, more valuable. And we never, ever apologize for taking up space. This is Virginia Whitcomb, signing off from Burlington, Vermont. Where we don't just survive the winter, we make it fear us. Where family means fighting together. Where coffee means rebellion. Where 64-year-old widows take down billion-dollar corporations and live to pour the first cup. Thanks for watching our story. Now go write your own. And remember, when they try to burn you down, brew back stronger. Always brew back stronger.